Hello everyone and welcome to another video. So I have a Ren Faire coming up this weekend and I just wanted to make another outfit for it. So last year I made the Hylian armor set from The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and I really loved that concept and like how that came out. So I want to do like a similar concept but a little different. So today for the design I'm going to be pulling from my favorite game of all time, Fire Emblem Awakening. Fire Emblem Awakening is an incredible game. I was introduced through it from Smash Bros. And I saw Lucina and Robin. I was like, who are these characters? Like, they look so cool. And I just really love the costume design in particular. Is so cool. It's very like inspirational to me as like a fashion designer and making costumes and stuff.
Another one, thank you. Another one, thank you. Another one, thank you.
Like this game, like the design specifically like are so cool. So what I'm going to be making today is the villager class armor set outfit. And so basically in Fire Emblem Awakening, or you know, in Fire Emblem in general, you have your blue units, which are your units and you get to control them. Like these are your characters that you level up throughout the game. And then there's also on the map, there's like your red units, which are your enemies and you're fighting each other. But also sometimes there's the green units, which are your allies. So these are characters that you can't control, but they might help you fight. Or also there's sometimes like defenseless villagers that you have to protect and save. So this outfit in particular, it's pretty simple. So I think I'm able to attack it quite easily. It's just a tunic and some trousers. I have like two different options to go with this villager route. As I said, there's like the green allies. So the villager, the NPC is like the green tunic, but there's also another villager which is in your army specifically, and his name is Donald. I just really like the way the blue tunic looked, so I'm going to be making that tunic. But yeah, let's go check out the design of what I'm making and let's look into the details.
So I just wanted to start this breakdown by giving credit where credit is due. Now, all the art you see in front of you here is created by the game's character designer and illustrator Yuka Tsujiyoko. Phenomenal designs that I just am completely obsessed with. So let's break down what this villager class outfit looks like. So looking at the concept art on the right, now I can't read Japanese, but I'm just going to go off of what I visually am seeing here. So the villager class is wearing this tunic with a pair of trousers, and he also has these boots and is wearing a pot on his head for armor. Genius! So this tunic is color blocked. We can see the central mid-tone color, and then there's a darker shade on the side of the tunic and where the sleeves are. And the tunic also has a collar trim at the top, which also has a collar that's extended out of it. And I can also make this out to be like an undershirt that's sort of rolled up over the tunic sleeve. Now I'm not 100% sure because the tunic cuff part is sort of a different color than that top part of the collar. So I guess it's up for interpretation. And another thing that I just love about this art is the fact that we can see the stitching. So that will help us determine sort of how the garment is made and constructed. And looking at these pants, it seems like your average sort of trouser, just like a little semi-baggy pant. So this will be super easy to make. And there also seems to be like this sort of rope belt around the waist that also has a bag in the back, but I don't think I'll have the time to make that.
So yeah, that's basically Donald's outfit and the villager outfit. So I already made the sample. So let's go take a look at what that looks like. And yeah, let's get into it.
Okay, so here we are looking at the sample of the tunic. This is the collar. I try to just replicate the style lines that we see on the villager outfit to the best of my ability, as well as the patterns. And to pattern out this tunic, I kind of just traced around the pattern of my tunic from last year, and then I redrew the style lines to match the style lines of the villager. It felt pretty good, and I didn't really have any complaints. The only issue I had was the collar on the tunic. It just felt a little too long or too high up. It felt like a Dracula collar, and I thought it would be a good idea to like take it down a little, so I ended up taking it down an inch. And these are actually the same trousers that I used last year, and they work, but I think they're just a little too skinny, so I'm gonna give them some more volume.
So let's talk about all of the materials I'm going to be using for this project. So now that Joann's is closed, it is like so hard for me to like find anything in store in person. So I had to rely on online shopping. So I like to use this website called Fabric Wholesale Direct just because they have like a lot of affordable options for fabric. And I don't go too crazy on the fabric with my projects. I don't do anything too high-end just because I cannot afford it. So I purchased the cotton broadcloth from Fabric Wholesale Direct. And then for the pants, I'm gonna be using this linen fabric, which is polyester. I forget the name, but I'll put it right here.
Right.
So I just, again, I dyed this as well because I couldn't find the exact color I was looking for. And basically to dye all this fabric, I went on to Rit Dye. I went on their website and I looked across all their shades, looking for the right hues to color match the artwork basically that I saw of Donald. And I kind of like looked at all the dye formulas and purchased whatever dye I needed, and it was pretty hefty on my bank account. So yeah, but I'm really happy with how these came out because I think I did a pretty good job of dyeing them and color matching it to the best of my ability. So yeah, I'm happy with that. For the tunic, we have these two. I'm gonna be using this for the middle parts, and this is gonna be used for the sleeves and the side panels on the tunic. And I also had this one. This was the original run of this, but I just didn't like the shade. It didn't come out quite as what I was expecting it to. Ew! And then these are gonna be used for the collar. This is gonna be like the upright one, and it's gonna be sort of like the collar trim and the like folded up sleeve going on. That's what this is for. And then this again is for the trousers. And now we also have all this thread I'm using. Ooh. So I just try to match the best blues I could find to the darker tone. And again, I have these two for the lighter parts and for the pants. Now moving on to all the extra goodies. The villager has like the tie thing around the waist. So I found this big button that I was gonna sort of put some EVA foam on and sort of make some details. And then I just sort of got some rope. This has sort of just been hanging around my studio, so now I have some use for it. So I'm gonna use that for the waist part. And I also got a plain old zipper at Michael's for the pants. And then also, I got some paint for this pot, which I'm gonna use for the helmet.
Oh, yes.
I kind of just found this at Walmart. It was like $20. I'm gonna Mod Podge this, and then I'm gonna try to paint it like that brassy gold color that we see on the villagers. So I don't know how that's gonna turn out. And I ideally would want to sort of gold foil this, but I don't have the resources or the time for that, so I'm just gonna paint it and hope it looks okay. But yeah, that's all the materials. So let's get to sewing. This Ren Faire is on Saturday and today's Monday, so I have all of today to work on it, and then the next few days the rest of the week I'm working, so I'll only be able to work on it after work. So today I'm gonna try to grind, and my goal for today is to get the tunic and the pants done. And then that will leave me for the rest of the week to work on whatever little accessories and fun bits, like the helmet, the belt, and that's pretty much it. So let's do this. I think I can do it. Let's go.
So to start, I ironed all of my fabric and pinned my patterns into place to make sure that they were nice and secure. And then I traced around them so I knew where to sew. And then I added some notches to make sure that the pattern would line up in some places. And I also added some seam allowance because I forgot to do that on the pattern itself. And then I just cut everything out and I repeated that process for all of the patterns. And here's how they all looked together and ready to be sewn.
Okay, so now that I have all of my tunic pieces cut out, the first order of business is to start with the body. So I'm going to sew up the side seams, and then from there I'm going to do the collar, and then from there I'm going to do the sleeves, and that's all I have to do for the tunic. It is pretty straightforward, so I'll see you in the voiceover.
So here I'm getting that front panel of the tunic ready to be sewn to the side panels of the tunic. So I just pinned it into place and then I ran it through the sewing machine.
Hey!
And because of the top stitching detail on the tunic, I decided to press the seam down towards the center of the tunic so that once I stitched over it, it would be nice and secure in place. But before I did that, I decided to serge it to make sure it was nice and clean on the inside. And then I decided to just go for it, and then I just serged anywhere on the pattern that was going to be open on the inside and not sewn into anything else. I do this because not only does it look nice, but it will also keep the fabric from fraying as I'm wearing it. So once everything was serged up, it was time for the top stitching, and I wanted to match the artwork as best as I could. The stitches seem to be a little longer, so I changed the stitch length to 4, and I also doubled the thread on my machine to make it a little bulkier. So once my machine was all set up, I then just got right into top stitching. To keep that straight line, I'm lining up that seam line with the edge of that line on the foot, and I also moved the needle closer to the seam line just to make it a little cleaner for myself. And I'm just trying to take my time because the top stitching is darker and it's kind of a contrast thread to what it's being sewn onto.
Ew.
So once the stitching was all set, it was time to sew the front to the back. So for now, I'm just sewing up the shoulder seams, and then I'll do the side seams after I do the collar. So here I'm getting all of my collar pieces ready. So I have these two pieces, and I'm grabbing my heat fusible interfacing to bind to one of them. And then I am getting them together and pinning them to sew them around the entire edge, and I'm leaving one end open so that I can flip it over, and that end is the one that's going to be sewn into the other part of the collar. And here I'm clipping the edges of the seam allowance around that corner to release the tension from the fabric, which will allow for a nice cleaner finish when I turn it inside out. So here, once it is flipped inside out, I'm just ironing it down to make it nice and clean. And once I'm satisfied, I bring it to the sewing machine and I do an edge stitch around the collar to keep it nice and flat and to just make it look nice and clean. And then I put the interfacing on the other part of the collar, and I got those two pieces sewn together. And from there, I get the standing collar and I pin it into place to be sandwiched between the neck opening. So here I am just stitching it to one of the ends and I'm tacking it into place, and then once I do that, I sew the other opening. From here I'm stitching the front opening. So I'm just taking my time with this to make sure it's nice and clean. And I'm stitching in a triangle, so I start from one end, go to a point, and pivot the needle to reach the other point. And from here I'm going to be snipping it so that it will open it up. And I'm trying to be very careful so that I don't cut the stitches, which is very scary, but I did it. And then I'm also snipping the corners to give it a nice cleaner finish, and I'm also clipping anywhere that there's a curve to release the tension of the fabric from the inside. And once that's done, I'm flipping it over inside out, and here I'm just ironing it down to make it look nice and clean, and I'm prepping it for the top stitching I'm about to do. So here I'm just doing a stitch right along the edge to keep the seam allowance down and to make it look nice and neat as always. And from here I'm trying to see how the collar will look, and I'm just pinning it from the front, and I'm doing one line at a time. So I'm just stitching the bottom of the front, and from there I'm snipping the seam allowance so that I can turn it easier, and because there's such a harsh edge, it's just tricky to do these corners. So I'm just doing one line at a time, taking my time. Here's the corner. So here it is on the outside. And then from there, I just go around the collar. And ba-boom! Done. Except for the fact that I need to stitch the inside. So I'm ironing the seam allowance to make it nice and flat, and I'm pinning it to make sure that I get every single bit of it as I go around. And yeah, then I go ahead, once it's all pinned up, and I top stitch it. And I'm just, again, taking my time. And then once the collar was done, it was just time to do the side seams. So I just did that really quick and wrapped it up for the night.
What?
Alright, you guys, it's day 2 of working on this project. Admittedly, I'm very tired because I was working all day, but I'm not gonna let it stop me from being productive.
You will not stop me!
So let's see, I have 3 more nights, including this night, to work on this project. And the only thing that's done right now is the tunic. So I kinda get a groove going here. So I made a little checklist for myself up here that will help me sort of see what I need to get done for one day. So tonight, my goal is to finish up the sleeves and get them on the tunic, and then the tunic will pretty much be done. And then after that, I'm gonna cut out the patterns for the trousers, and then tomorrow night, I'm gonna sew up the trousers. Hopefully I can do that in one night, we'll see. And then Friday night, I'm just leaving for all the accessories. So that includes the helmet. I just need to paint the pot basically, and maybe add some like strings so that it'll like stay on my head. And then I also need to do like the little button thingy on the waist. And yeah, so that's what I need to get done. So let's get to it. So before I get started on sewing up the sleeve, I kind of just want to do an explanation of how the sleeve works because it's a little weird. So initially my plan was to make a tunic and then make an undershirt that went under the tunic so that the sleeves would just be rolled up over the tunic sleeves. But in order to save time and cut corners, I'm doing something a little different and weird. Basically this sleeve is made up of 3 different patterns. So we have the tunic sleeve, and then we have an extension of the sleeve, which is kind of like working as a trim. And then we have a facing that gets flipped up onto the inside of the sleeve just to keep the bottom nice and clean. I don't know if that makes any sense, but hopefully it'll make more sense as I get sewing. You can kind of see the process.
So To start, I just got all my sleeve patterns ready, and then I went to the serger and I serged up anywhere that was going to be open on the inside and not sewn into anything else. And here's all the patterns ready to be sewn together. I put a pin on the front just to mark where it was so I wouldn't get confused, and the F and the B sort of means the front and the back. And there's also a little notch you can see, so I know where to line everything up. And here I'm just sandwiching all the patterns together, and I'm just demonstrating what it's going to work like. So the facing's going to go underneath and fold up into the sleeve, and the trim is going to be folded up over all of that. So to start, we sew up the side seams, and then I sandwich everything together. So I'm just going to go along the edge and sew everything into place on that one seam. So this is the bottom of the sleeve. And here I am getting that trim part, and I am ironing the seam allowance to keep everything nice and neat. And then I'm bringing the sleeve over to the tunic to pin it into place, and I just go around and I sew the sleeve onto the tunic. And once the sleeve is done, I get the trim and I fold it up over the sleeve.
Okay, so the tunic is pretty much done. I am super excited with how it came out so far. Basically what I should do next is tack the facing to the inside of the sleeve so that it stays in place. But for now, I'm probably just gonna use safety pins because time, and yeah. Next I have to hem it, but I'm gonna wait for the trousers to be done and try them on together before I figure out where I want the hem to sort of end. But yeah, here it is in all its glory so far.
Slay! Slay!
Yeah, so now I have to cut out the trouser patterns, and I'm gonna call it a night. So let's do that, and then I'll pick it up again tomorrow night. And hopefully I can get the trousers done in one sitting, but we'll see. Alright you guys, hello, I'm back. It's day 3. Night 3 of working on this project. So I have all the pant patterns cut out and I have them all serged up. They're ready to be sewn. So right now it's 9 p.m. and I want to challenge myself to try to finish this as soon as possible. I'm aiming for 3 hours. I don't know, that's kind of crazy, but I think it's doable, honestly. As long as I put my mind to it and I focus and lock in, it will be great. So, yeah, it's 9 p.m. I want to finish these around midnight. I'm playing a video that's like 3.5 hours long, so I just want to try to finish by the end of that video. Let's get going. Let's get sewing. Let's go!
After starting my timer, I got my pockets and I sewed them to the trousers at the top, and I ironed them down to make them nice and flat for me to top stitch / edge stitch over them. And then I had the dart on the back pattern of the trousers, so I pinned it into place and got it ready for me to sew it. And to finish it off, I do 3 knots and just tie it down. And then I ironed it to, again, make it nice and neat and flat. You always want to iron after finishing your seams. So then I just repeated the same process for the pocket on the back pattern, and then I got my front and back patterns and matched them together. And then here I'm measuring the pocket opening, and then I just sew it down. I left myself about 6.5 inches, and here's the pocket all sewn up. And then to do the side seam, I go around the pocket and sew all the way down the side of the pants. Apologies for the horrendous lighting, but I then do a bar tack on the top and bottom of the pocket and edge stitch it to make it nice and secure. And the next step was the fly, so I brought the two front pieces together and I just sewed up the fly. It's very complicated. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if you want to see me make a tutorial or something, just let me know. But here's how the fly came out. And so the clock was ticking. And then it was time to just sew up the back pieces together. So I sewed up the back seam. And then here's how that came out. And so the pants were starting to take shape, and now I just had to sew up the inseam. So I start from one end of the pants, and sew all the way down towards the crotch, and sew all the way towards the other pant. And once the inseam was done, it was time for the beloved waistband. So I pinned it and sewed from one side seam across the top, and then I closed it off again at the other side seam so that I could flip it inside out and sew it to the top of the waistband on the pants. So here, that's what I'm doing. I'm just sewing the waistband to the pants at the top from one front seam all the way around to the other. And then I pin it down on the inside to cover up the seam allowance and kill two birds with one stone. So I'm just going and doing an edge stitch at the bottom of the waistband to sew that seam allowance into place. And then time was up.
It's about 12:55. I started at like 9:30, so the time was what, 3:23. So I did make the time that I wanted to, which is always great, but more importantly, these are done for the most part. I mean, I still need to do like the button and snaps, and I do need to do the hem, but that would take like 5 seconds, but I just don't feel like it right now. So womp womp, but yeah, I made the progress I wanted to. I haven't tried them on, so let's just hope that they fit. Because if not, that would be a real bummer. But yeah, so these are donezo. And so I finished my checklist for tonight. I have one more night left to finish all this stuff. So that's basically all the props and accessories.
Now, starting with the waist belt buckle thingy, I basically used the button and I fed some rope through the loop in the back. I had to use like a piece of thread to like yank the rope through the hole because it was just way too thick and it like barely fit. But then I just tied a bunch of knots at the end to match, and using some scissors and a brush, I just brushed out the rope to give it that frayed look at the bottom. And for the button, I made a pattern on Adobe Illustrator, and then I used a pen and some heat to etch into the foam. I think it was 2 millimeters thick. And how the rope works is you just loop it and tie it around the belt buckle. And then for the pot helmet, I basically just used some Mod Podge and put 2 layers on. And then I used some paint. I mixed 2 different color paints to get that brassy, softer look. And yeah, and in order for it to fit on my head, I'm using this Russian, I think it's called the Ushanka hat. That pronunciation is definitely way off, but I used that to fit it to my head so that the helmet is secure to my head and it won't fall off.
Trust me. Watch this.
Alright you guys, that is going to be all for today's video. I'm really happy with how this project turned out. I had a lot of fun making it, and going to the Ren Faire dressed up as Donald, like, it was so much fun. A lot more people like recognized the character than I thought they would, so that was really exciting. Fire Emblem fans unite, let's go. There were some things in the project that I didn't quite get to make that I really wanted to. I really wanted to make that bag in the back, and I really wanted to make like the lace up front on the tunic, as well as like the signature like villager lance, like that bronze lance. Like, I wish I made it, but I could always make it another time. Yeah, let me know how I did. If there is something you would have approached differently, let me know. Yeah. You can check out my other socials. I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Twitch, so go ahead and feel free to check me out there if you'd like. Again, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a good one.